country has done a lot when it comes to laws and policies. But again, I can say when it comes to women and gender in total, we are not yet there.
Persons with disability tend to be left out a lot of times. We attend.
Contrast podcast, kuwasiliana nasi. Today we'll be covering matters climate change. You know, our future is fully covered by climate change. I go by the names Winnie Kinoti, and I have two very special guests, and they will get to introduce themselves. So I think we start on my left. Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Selena Cheng, known as Achichi. I'm a woman with disability. I advocate for the rights and inclusion of women and girls with disability in the community. And I'm a climate change champion. Thank you for having me.
On my right.
Okay, thank you for having me. My name is Vexina Mweni. I work with Kenya Climate Change Working Group as a gender convener, and I'm a gender specialist and a gender champion. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome, guys. I'm looking forward to the conversation that we're going to have about our future and climate change, also on adaptation and how communities are adapting with the current climate change laws. And we're aligning this to the SB 63 that happened recently in Germany, Bonn. We are aligning this to understand how our communities, these laws and these bylaws or these additions that we are making to our laws and commitments that we are making around climate change, how they're impacting on the community and how is the community adapting around this. So I start with my guest, Achichi. I would like to know how women with disability or persons with disability, with the new laws and commitments that we are making around climate change, and knowing that that particular group is among the, the very vulnerable. How is the adaptation looking like? Tunajaribu aje ensure that tunafuatilia haya maneno ya climate change na jinsi venye inatu affect. How are we dealing with it?
So, hey, speaking as a community leader, women, especially women with disability right now, I'd say that civic education is not that much. So at times, yes, we have the laws that and the commitments, but the question is, when we are making the commitments, how many persons with disability were even present during the commitments that are being made, the discussions? How many persons with disability even knew that these things are here? So I'd say in a community level, the adaptation is not even working right now, because even the leaders don't really incorporate persons with disability, and the dissemination of information doesn't even reach half people with disability in the community. So at times it's very hard to say that we are working on these commitments, yet the persons with disability are not there. Yeah.
How just to to carry on with that particular topic, mm-hmm. I would like to know, with the representation of the persons with disability in these national conventions, mm-hmm. and international, even mm-hmm. at the African level, mm-hmm. how is the representation? Is it just persons with disabilities? Because we know we have various categories. Yes. Is it just the ones who theirs is not visible? Or is it just a certain subcategory of persons with disabilities who get to participate in these proceedings? And how would you deem the representation should be done as a country moving forward? What would you advocate for?
So the ones that happens most of the times, I've seen persons with physical disability and maybe persons with albinism. And with that, we tend to leave out like a bigger number of persons with disability. and they don't get represented. And I always say that we have different types of disability and different needs. So for the conventions, it would have been nice to see we have like all types of disability represented, so that if I am a deaf person, you know, I'll advocate knowing that I understand what deaf people are going through. And if I am a physical person who's using clutches, then I will advocate for these people because I understand. If I am a wheelchair user, then I know that wheelchair users, you know. If I am a short-statured person, then I will advocate for them because I understand their issues. And we have even the psychosocial, we have, you know, the who are with vitiligo. And you see, with all these types of disabilities, we tend to face different, you know, challenges with the climate change. You'll find the people who are with albinism, when it is so hot and, you know, their skin can't really work with it. And we also have like us who are using, you know, clutches. At times it's so hard, you know, to walk around when it is, you know, raining. And the wheelchair users also. So the convention should really understand how persons with disability navigate through the climate change, and just give them the opportunity to also air out their issues and what they think will work better. But also have all persons with disability, like all types of disability in the room, so that you get to understand like what will work for all of us.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So, Madam Vexina, moving to you, because I know you've been in the fight of engenderment of national spaces, and especially climate change, and you're a gender expert. I would want you to highlight how women currently are handling or adapting with the climate change. Firstly, especially women from very vulnerable communities, and how are they being involved when the laws and the commitments that we're making as a country, because, you know, we understand women in our communities are mostly the ones who are doing adaptation and climate work. So how are they, you know, benefiting? How are they being involved in these processes? Are they understanding some of the commitments that we are making, you know?
Our country has done a lot when it comes to laws and policies. But again, I can say when it comes to women and gender in total, we are not yet there. Why I'm saying there is that we have been struggling between practical and theory. You find that, yes, we have the laws, but they are in theory. When it comes to practicals, you find women are left out. Why am I saying women are left out? Because you find that connecting between the theory and the practicals is where the gap is. You find most of the women are semi-literate, and you find that understanding the scientific language of climate change is like a dream to them. The jargons, the words are too jargon for them to understand. And you find at times, in most cases, women are doing a lot. But when they hear about climate change, they usually think it is all about tree planting, nothing else. So for me, I can say, yes, we are making a milestone when it comes to policies and frameworks and all that. But again, we are not there. If I was to rate, I could say maybe 10% of women who are in highest leadership categories understand what climate change is, but the 90% of grassroots women do not fully understand what climate change is all about because of the barrier of language. I would say when we look at the international platforms where these policies and agreements are being done, you find in most cases, you will not find the grassroots women. You will always find the elite and those who are in a position where they can pay and maybe attend these conferences. Again, you find that we have women who are in agriculture, who are doing programs on water, who are doing programs on conserving the environment, but they are yet to understand the connectivity between what they are doing and maybe the policies and guidelines laid on under climate change. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So on highlighting that, I would like to know what are some of the unique niches that persons with disability bring in terms of community climate change development and projects. What is that unique thing that you would say that, persons with disability bring this when it comes to conversations around climate change and adaptation within the community?
I'd say when we have persons with disability in the room, it's easier to make like better decisions, because again, I understand that when we're doing like infrastructures, let's say, if today we decided to do ramps, I won't be the only person who will use it.
Yeah, that's true.
Everyone will use it. It's not only accessible for me, but it's accessible for everybody.
Yeah.
So when we make sure that persons with disability are well taken care of, then the community just works,
Yeah, because I remember there's a time we had a conversation with your group that
Yeah.
is the persons with disability, women empowerment.
Yes.
And I remember the conversation on all of us are just one accident away from living with a disability. And then I remember the gentleman who was speaking to us and mentioned that he had an operation on his leg. And for some time, he realized that, his house was not as accessible as he thought. So I also remember a conversation where we pointed out that I think, or as far as I can remember, as a country, we started having the conversation around accessibility in our buildings and on our roads when we were swearing in the president, His Excellency Mwai Kibaki.
Yeah.
And that's when, he had gotten an accident.
He was on a wheelchair.
And then we thought, oh my God,
our country was not.
And our stadiums are really not as accessible.
Yeah.
I would like to think that even now, we still are struggling with accessibility, despite the fact that we are having a new discussion or a continuous discussion on climate change. So the vulnerabilities of a person with disability have become more, because as a country now we experience a lot of floods. How do you, like, if you were to give us a vision of, if community, just like you mentioned, brought in persons with disability and ensured they were not brought in just as flower girls. They were brought in at the forefront of making these laws. What is your vision? How do you think adaptation would have been done differently in our country?
You see now, with, let's say, when we have persons with disability, we tend to highlight things that people don't really think of.
Yeah.
When we say like garbage, I am very sure with persons with disability, they will give you like views on how best you can do like garbage collection. Yes, we will not be the ones who do it, but I won't say that we can't do it. But as a community, when we're doing like a garbage collection in a certain way and making sure that our infrastructures don't get like, flooded with garbage in the first place before the rains come. It would be very nice to see that our streets are very clean, and seeing that the sewer lines are where they're supposed to be. Because now you see, again, with the landlords that you're having, the houses are everywhere, even where they're not supposed to be, having buildings. So you see, when we have persons with disability in the house, they will tell you even like when you're doing like your house rental houses, can you make sure that the doors are a bit wider? You have like accessible toilets for us. And I know that people don't really think about, especially the washrooms, the toilets. People don't think about these small things. And they are very important. You see now, For us, we tend to see the smaller things that people don't really think of. Because I remember there's a time we were having a discussion in a group, and then we asked, how often do we go to hotels and we find that we have a male and a female washroom, and then we have that one for person with disability. And then we were asking, is persons with disability the same gender?
Oh,
With the same gender?
yeah.
Why do they just put it like one, washroom? And then people, I see, even you're like, what?
Yeah, I never really saw it that way. Yeah, right.
That's all.
It's a thought.
Yeah, and the room went like the way you're going right now. And then people like, by the way, and then we were like, at times we say we don't want to be excluded from even the washroom. When you're like unajenga for male and female, make sure kwa male uko na moja ya disability, kwa female kuna moja ya disability. So don't put one just, for all types of disability. And we realized that people don't really think around these things. So that is the importance of having us in the room. You know, we will highlight things that you overlooked,
Or maybe things that we, normally you don't think about.
Yeah.
Sometimes I would like to assume that each and every person has a certain level of, what is it called? Certain level of, ile yani,
knowledge.
not knowledge, uko na
The mentality of these are how things should be done, but you don't expect them to be done the way they are done.
no, ni kama uko na your a certain level of elitism just in the category that you're in. Uko na you don't get to think about it because then it doesn't affect you until somebody else brings in, that view, and you're like, okay, I see what you're saying. Because I when I use the bridge, I also use the ramp. I don't like the stairs. And it helps me also. And some ramps are really steep, and sometimes I get to thinking, oh my goodness, I get what you're saying. Being included in the room brings out a perspective that normally people miss out on, just because of privilege. It's actually privilege, a certain level of privilege, because then that thing does not affect you directly. Sometimes it's like you get to be blind towards that particular issue, just like the issues of women over time, as we have been highlighting. And then, mostly men get to thinking, maybe, maybe they won't act on it, but yes, your point. They will think it will be a thought triggering, point. So I would like to turn to Madam Vexina. And, we developed the National Gender Action Plan. We were both on the steering committee. And now we are looking at the disaster management that is coming up. With the processes that we went through and the fact that the budget sometimes can be very tight, so having everyone in the room becomes very difficult. And, the cost of inclusion sometimes takes the budget higher, during that process, what are some of the things that you looked at and you were like, maybe we could improve on this? Maybe this is an area that needs us to up, especially because that the National Gender Climate Change Action Plan was to ensure that, climate change is fully engendered, and that when we are implementing, when we are making commitments, everyone is sort of and included in those particular commitments. When it comes to benefit sharing, loss and damage, everyone is thought of.
Okay, let me say, yes, we have the policy now, and even the loss and damage is a concern in this country. We have been very much affected as women by floods and drought, of which we cannot run away from. And you find that when these things happen, there is that outcry there where women come out and say, oh, you didn't include us in this and all that. That gives us the mindset that there is a category of women who are lacking when these policies are being done. And one of the things I can share we have been having challenge with is the inclusion of indigenous knowledge. Most of the grassroots women are living with that knowledge, that indigenous knowledge, whereby when it is about the rain, they just look at the flowers of certain trees and assume the rain will be torrential, there will be no rain. So bringing that mentality on a table where we have done a policy and said maybe we don't need the indigenous knowledge, we need the Met and all that departments to tell us about the weather. It's quite chaotic because by the time these women come to understand what kind of measures we are using towards coming up with these policies, they will feel it's like they have been left out. And again, you find that when these policies are being done, yes, we are doing them, but you find that most of the policies are just done by us who work for certain organizations, but we don't bring that independent woman who is doing a lot on her own, who is doing farming, who is doing maybe conservation and all that on her own, to understand the challenges she has been facing in whatever she is doing. You find that in most cases, it's like we think for them, of which is not as good as we take it. And that is clearly shown by what she has said about the PWDs, that we assume that they can use one toilet. The same we assume these women who are in the agriculture and are independent are facing the same knowledge with the same problems with women who are elite. Again, you find that we need to look at where the gap is, and mostly the gap is when we are doing the consultation part. You find that due to lack of finances and all that, we don't have categories or tailored conversations towards certain groupings of women. You find that we just look at who can contribute, and the majority are left out there for them just to wait for the policy to be brought and be implemented. And one thing I should say is you find when these women are left out, it is a challenge for us. And a challenge is when you bring something on a table where the decision was not meant on that table, it will give you challenges in implementing. And I've seen it in different areas. Giving just an example, there was that recent law on compensation on natural resources, benefits, sharing, and all that. And you find when we look at the national resources, sharing, and whatever process, you find in this country, property in many communities is owned by men.
Yeah.
Yes.
But when it comes to work being done on that property, you find mostly it is done by women.
Yes.
Like planting trees, we count women and children
Yes.
who do a lot of work. When it comes to watering, every parent, even including myself, will wake up my children to go and do the watering and all that. When it comes to carrying of manure and all that, it is the children and women. But when it comes to benefit of sharing, you find it is the owner
Men.
of that property. For me, that is a very big challenge, because you find that when we are saying the owner, you find that the women and the children might feel left out in the sharing, because at times we know, yes, not all families who cannot bring everything on the table. But we have families whereby when the money gets into the pocket of the husband, it disappears with everything.
Yeah.
Another thing is you find in the African context, you find most of these properties are communal properties, owned by great-grandparents, but one is the custodian of that property. Maybe when it comes to benefit sharing, he will be the custodian of the benefit.
Yeah.
How will it now be shared among the? It will create another problem. So you find those are the talks we need to hear from the grassroots, people coming up with solutions which can help such issues when they arise when we are implementing the policies. And another thing is you find we are crying that the economy is bad and we are looking forward to doing socio-economic empowerment. And again, we look at the socio-economic empowerment and the literacy level. You find that most of the women who are there, they cannot join value chains because they don't understand how to sign the contracts. They don't understand how to maneuver the international markets and that, but they are doing agriculture. You find by the end of it all, they will just rely on brokers and maybe get a loss when it comes to selling their products. So for me, to achieve whatever the handicap, the GCAP and other policies have, we have to look at categories of inclusivity, whereby we have categories of those who are elite and semi-elite and those who are illiterate totally. And that will pave way for us to say we are somewhere when it comes to climate change.
Oh, thank you very much. That was quite enlightening, you know. Now, turning to Madam Achichi, I would like to get a clear picture when it comes to the commitments that, you know, the country is making towards climate change, the laws that, you know, that are coming up, especially around climate change. How is the participation of the persons with disability looking like? You know, within the community itself, we have money, you know, like Floca. I know you're in Nairobi, so people in Nairobi are really not benefiting from that yet. But then there is also other, you know, donors within the community or, you know, NGOs that are working within the community. Are the persons with disability benefiting from this? Do they understand that they can benefit from this? You know, and how is that whole thing looking like?
So with the funds, I'd say persons with disability are not fully aware also if there are funds that are allocated. And for those who know, they can have challenges seeing as at times the documentations that are being required, most of the times they don't really have like all the documents that are required. And that one at times just, you know, closes the doors for them. And also I'd say there are times that we are not even given that opportunity, you know, just to get to showcase what you're doing. And given opportunity whereby you can go and just speak for yourself. And as she said, at times when someone else is speaking on your behalf, they will not lay out the real issue that you're facing. And so with that, I'd say in the community in Nairobi, I've only seen few groups, I think 3 of them that I know that have really gotten money. I think the one got from Shovco. The other one, I think they had from Oxfam. The other one, I don't know where the funds came from, but at least I know of 3 that got funds. So I'd say at times also, because we don't really get the opportunity even to get the civic education around, like, you know, where the policies are being, like, you know, made and how it is made and, you know, the processes that are being taken. And so with that, you know, if you don't know anything, because without information, without proper, not just without proper information, there's nothing you can do. Hey, you know, we went, things happen, you know, and then someone will even read for you the document and you're like, wait, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at times I think persons with disability tend to be left out. A lot of times we tend to be left out. I think even yesterday we were speaking on a finance bill.
Yeah.
And then we were asking ourselves, we've seen a lot of organizations doing like civic education on how the finance bill will affect mostly women and youths.
Yeah.
And then I was asking, how many of those organizations decided to see the parts of how the finance bill is going to impact or, persons with disability?
Yeah.
Are they going to be affected, or are they going to be, considered this time? Because the last finance bill, they tended to cut off some of the budget that was allocated to disability docket. And for this time, I've not really gone through the document, so I don't really know how it is. But you see now, those were the questions that I was asking, like how many persons with disability, like how many organizations have decided like we will call, we will have this session with persons with disability just to chambue the finance bill and get to understand how is it going to affect the lives of persons with disability. And with that, the people that were in the room, they were like, no one has the answer,
no one has the answer. But also on that note, before we wind this up, I would like to get a clear picture of what is your take on the budget or on the cost of inclusion. Because, most of the time, even when we are speaking about the two-third gender rule, the question or the biggest obstacle is usually the budget. Government will say we don't have the budgets for that.
Yes.
So now the cost of inclusion, I'm looking at it when I'm budgeting for activities. If I am going to have persons with disability, I am going to make sure that the number includes aids.
Yes.
People will come with an aid. I will need sign language interpreters. If I am doing production of books, I will make sure there is Braille.
Yeah.
So for me, that becomes easy because then our organization, Crown Trust, makes, inclusion is part of the core of our values.
Yeah.
So now I'm asking, what would be your response for, matters inclusion, the cost of inclusion? How should we look at it? How should we take it?
Yeah. Yeah, I think we've discussed about this the other time when we were saying like we understand that most organizations they don't really consider persons with disability most of the time when they call us. And this one we were talking about transportation. And we were saying like we attend the event, and let's say they had reimbursement for all the participants, and they were giving like 2,000 shillings. So we tend to ask at times, for me, Achichi, to go to the stage, I'll have to use a bike. I want to walk to the stage. And for that, I'll have to use like more money than the other person. So we tend to like try to do like awareness just to get people to understand that if I'm a deaf person and I am not like requesting for an Uber, then I'll have challenge going to the venue where I was invited. Why? Because if I'm using like public transport, they won't take me to the exact place. And if you're talking, you will go at the stage and you'll ask, I'm going to this place, can you show me the way? But now if I am a deaf person and I come sign, asking you the question in sign language and you've not gone to any classes of sign, you see, you'll tend to think maybe I want to steal from you. The way like now Kenya is, if I come and tap you, because now that is what they will do first, they will tap you. And you can react in another way. So how do we make persons with disability their lives to be more easier? And yes, at times I've had a conversation with other organizations, and then they said, no, for us persons with disability, we don't really work with them because it is so expensive to work with us. And it's not that we are expensive, it's just that our lives.
Or the community at large is not adapted
Adapting.
towards including persons with
Yes.
disability.
Because now you see, if the community adapts, and it won't be expensive. Why? If now today we have like the public transports where they know how to sign. Now I can,
Maybe sign language should be made one of the
it
languages
is actually
that
it was
everyone
passed.
should learn.
It was
Yeah?
it passed like
passed
yesterday. Yes.
Ah,
The
nice.
day
And-
before yesterday.
Yeah, because I imagine if you're a deaf person and maybe during this podcast, we had someone who's deaf.
Yeah.
Would everyone in the room be able to communicate or understand what the deaf person was saying? So that leaves the gap. It makes inclusion very expensive because as a society, we are not adapted towards like having them or having persons with disability live among us.
Yes.
Because the funny thing is when I travel outside our country or to other developed countries, you find Uber has an option for persons with disability.
Yeah.
But when you look at the Uber app that we locally use, it does not have that
doesn't.
option.
Yeah.
So why is that? Why is nobody advocating for the fact that, this and the fact that currently our weather or climate change has become very volatile in our country. So we experience floods very
Yes,
quickly.
very quickly.
Sometimes it's the winds. Sometimes it's like a heat wave, especially in the CBD. It's more like we're experiencing they're called urban deserts. Yeah, where you find that you get the heat waves, and you get a flash of
Yeah.
heat. So we are not adopted towards having the persons with disability among us.
Yeah.
We don't even have walkways.
True.
Right next to the road, we don't have pedestrian walkways.
We don't.
So I'm imagining a blind person wants to leave their house and today they want to walk outside alone. I don't think in Nairobi roads you're going to survive,
you won't
which
be
is
safe.
quite unfortunate
Yeah.
because sometimes ailments, accidents happen, and that's why they're called accidents. And you could injure your leg and could be required to use a wheelchair for some time. If you cannot afford, or maybe you don't have a job that, or you don't have a source of income that allows you the luxury of having maybe aid or assistance, how does that look for you? For women, I say you're one pregnancy away from a disability because sometimes you've left the hospital
Yeah.
for, women who have just given birth. And, you're going through pain because of but then you have to walk, or maybe you have to access places where, during that period, it's quite difficult.
Very.
So inclusion is expensive, but I think it is expensive because from a very young age as a community, we are not adopted to live with persons with disability,
disability, yeah.
despite the fact that we know they are among our. So if you could give us a parting shot, Miss Vexena, and one from you, just a short one, as we end our session with the podcast.
What I can say is, yes, we have a lot of funds which are all over when it comes to climate change, but we need to package and maybe package and repackage. We have been packaging, but we need to repackage. Repackaging meaning that we need to sit down and draw our gaps. As you are putting it, we have gaps when it comes to persons with disability. We have gaps when it comes to addressing the gender as a whole, where women, persons with disability, the aged, the senior citizens,
Yeah.
and everybody needs to be brought on board so that we can address climate change. And again, we need to consider total inclusivity. It's not about inclusivity where Vexina and Winnie and you, we sit on a table. We need inclusivity where we can have women whom we are translating whatever conversation we are having into their local language so that they can understand, and maybe they can go and speak in the same local language to the other communities. And in doing that, we shall say inclusivity is real. Thank you.
Okay. So your parting shot, I would like to hear you being part of the PSG under the SSY project. How is that looking for you? And under the SSY project, how would you rank the project as a whole in terms of inclusivity as we end the podcast?
Being part of SSY, I'd say that I've seen difference from when we started and right now. I've seen having persons with disability included in various projects, and I love when I get online and I see like there was this activity and I can see new faces of persons with disability present there, and I see that they have fun. And at times we meet in other places,
Forums.
yes, and they would say that yes, I attended this, it went like this, and they'll give you feedback. And you see, when you get feedback from something that you advocated for, it boosts you, it
your
boosts
morale.
your morale. You know that yes, I'm doing something. And I'd say that SSY was inclusive. I've seen there was this radio station that they went to also. I saw there was a person with albinism, and it was aligned with the albinism day. So it was really nice to see that. So I love seeing difference when you just have a conversation and then you see that the organizations are taking keen on the issues that you raised, rather than at places we go, especially in government entities, you go and you talk to them and you try to explain things in a simple way, but they don't tend to take action on what you're saying. They will just agree and say yeah,
And
but
even the
nothing
feedback is missing.
nothing happens. And I was so happy to see that the sign language passed. It has been there for a very long time. I think we had it last. We were doing like memorandums last year, just trying to get to see if they can pass it. But now, I am very happy that that happened. The same way that the Disability Act was also passed, and I'm hoping that now that we have these laws, that they are going to be implemented. Zisikuwe tu ni hapo vo ziko kwa karatasi. They should do the implementation. Thank you.
So thank you so much. It was lovely having you on the Crown Trust podcast. My name is Winnie Kinoti, and looking forward to having you next time. Ciao.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.